guys, welcome back to the Bass Tutor. My name is Tyler Fry and I'm the Bass Tutor. So guys, before we get into this really cool video, I have a quick announcement to make, and that is that we now have Bass Tutor merch. A lot of you guys have been asking me and DMing me on Instagram and asking if we were going to have it, and we now have merch up. So I'm going to link it down below, and I'm going to post a picture right here and right here so you can get a quick feel of what it's all about. And you can go down there into the description and check it out. We're going to have some really cool releases here coming up soon. We've got hoodies, we've got shirts, we've got long sleeves, short sleeves, everything you want. Working on hats. Hats are coming. We haven't got there yet, but I'm working on those. So if you want to help support the channel and want to help me be able to go on some more cool adventures and make some cool videos, go down below and check it out. Now, let's get into a really informational video that I was really contemplating not making, because this is kind of a little trick I got up my sleeve. But since you guys are subscribers, I'm going to teach you a little bit about my Clearwater crankbait. Now, as you know, a crankbait is super effective in just about any color water, but there's a time of year, especially right now in this summer to fall transition pattern, where this Clearwater crankbait really comes into play. And I call it the Clearwater crankbait, but you could really use it in clear water or stained water, maybe even dirty water. But I would prefer it in clear water situations due to the pressure. You know, right now on many of our lakes, it's been more pressure than it's ever been with boat traffic and people not being at work and stuff like that. So it's getting really crazy and really tough to fish, especially where I live. And this little lure and this little rig has really come into play. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the wobble head. Now, a lot of people use a wobble head, and it's really used on the Tennessee River, especially in a lot of places like that. And what they'll do is they'll cast this thing out there far away, and they'll just sit there and they'll drag it back real slow, and they'll let it sit and kind of dance in the current. They'll drag it real slow, they'll get a thump, and they'll set the hook. They'll use it essentially like a jig. But I've learned that if you reel this thing real slow on the bottom, it has the same action as a crankbait, and it works extremely well in this late summer to fall transition for these bass. Now, don't get me wrong, this thing will work year round. I mean, it's really a handy dandy thing to keep in your tackle box. But the late summer to fall transition is really whenever it comes into play for me personally. I also use it a lot night fishing, so don't throw it out when it comes to night fishing in clear water. So let's get into a few little things that I like to throw on it. The number one thing is whenever I have to go to a finesse presentation, I like to throw the good old Zoom Magnum trick worm. You can tell it's just like the regular trick worm, but it's got a little bit fatter body and it's a little bit longer. And so when you rig this thing up there, I'll show you how to rig it. You just rig it up on there, bring it up on there to the EWG bend, rig it up on there, and put it in the plastic. And what this thing's going to do is it's going to land just like this, and it's going to start swinging down a little bit. And when you start reeling it, it's going to act almost like something fleeing from a big bass, like a snake, maybe a shad. I don't really know what they think it is, but whatever it is, they cannot stand this thing. And it's essentially like a shaky head, but like a crankbait at the same time. And what a lot of times I'll do is whenever I'm in a tournament or something, I'm trying to cover water, I'm going to throw this thing out there and I'm going to slow reel it. Well, say I'm on my home lake and I know that there is a big rock pile or a big brush pile down there. What I'll do is if I know the bite is tough and I'm reeling it along, then I'll just slow it down real slow, or I'll stop it. And then I'll kind of work it like a shaky head until I get past that cover. A really quick tip that I'm going to give you right here is whenever you're reeling this thing real slow on the bottom, a lot of the times you're going to feel it. It'll be going across the bottom and then it'll go thump, and it's going to bounce against some structure. Well, when it does that, take your rod tip and just jump it. And what it's going to do is it's going to be bouncing along on the bottom, it's going to hit something, and then it's going to jump up. And a lot of the times that's when those bass are going to really react to that thing and they're going to grab it. This was especially crucial a couple of years ago in the high school national championship me and my good buddy Jordan fished. We were fishing Pickwick Lake, and I was reeling this wobblehead down the ledges, and what would happen is I would bounce into something and I would jump it up, and the fish would come and they would grab it. It's a really effective technique, and it really comes into play, especially in the summer months to fall months. So the Zoom trick worm is a really great one. Another little tip I'll give you is you want to put some chartreuse on this tail. I don't care if the water is ultra clear and looks like bath water. Just a little bit of chartreuse goes a long way, and it's just something to give those fish something to key in on. They're going to be more apt to want to grab it because there's something that catches their eye. And something about chartreuse, it just makes them snap and they want to grab it. So, the Magnum trick worm is a really great option. Another great option is something like this Jackal Archelon. All this is a little crawl presentation bait. It's got the little pinchers. Something like a Strike King Rage Crawl or a Zoom Z Crawl or a Speed Crawl. Anything like that will go on this wobble head. It's got a really great compact form to it. It's running around on the bottom. It looks like a crawl, and they're going to go down there and they're going to hammer it every time. So if they're wanting something more compact, they're wanting something like a bluegill, something like that, throw a crawl bait on there. It doesn't really matter what type. Those are just my favorites. Just something that's got action and is going to go flipping through the water. So the third one on the list is, you can't go without it, and that is a creature style bait. My favorite is a brush hog. This one right here is just the Magnum size brush hog, or the standard size brush hog. And then a lot of the times I like to throw the baby brush hog on there as well. Whenever they're biting something like the crawl, I'll bump it down to the baby brush hog, and it's got more appendages and a little bit more action, and sometimes that's going to get you a few more bites. So a lot of times you just got to kind of play around with that. And last but not least is the old monster, the 10-inch worm. Okay, this thing right here catches fish from north to south. I mean, it's just been a staple in bass fishing for years. It's just a regular old 10-inch curly tail worm, and you can put it on there and you can just reel it through the water, and it's just like any of these other ones. They're going to come down there, they're going to look at it, and they're going to hit it because it just looks so great. So a lot of the times, if you're like me and you like power fishing, a lot of the times slowing down and fishing something extremely slow is just a pain in the butt. So instead of dragging it, I like to just slowly reel it. And a lot of the times it doesn't even have to be super slow. A lot of the times you can work it just like a fast crankbait, just like you would a wigglewort or a rock crawler. You can just sit there and keep cranking it. It's going to bounce off stuff and it's going to go crazy in the water. And when they see it, they're going to hit it. So the reason I call this the Clearwater crankbait is whenever the fishing is super pressured and it's super tough and super hard to get a bite, that's when this thing really shines. I feel like I get more bites off this wobble head with something like this crawl presentation or something like that looks more natural. A crankbait is a super phenomenal lure, but whenever it's coming through there and it's super loud and it's got rattles and stuff like that, a lot of the time those fish get keyed in on that stuff, okay? They've seen lures all year. Fall and summer is the latest parts of the year. And a lot of the time during the winter time, the fishing is not as super pressured. So, they get a kind of a span there for a few months where they don't really get keyed in on what their people are throwing. They're focused on eating bait fish. They kind of get a break to say. And so a lot of the times this time of year though, they've been pressured all year. They've been through pre-spawn. They've been through the spawn. It's post-spawn. It's been through the summer months. They've been through the ringer. It's tough. And so they've seen every crankbait, swim bait, spinnerbait, chatterbait, you name it, they've seen it. And so a lot of the times, throwing something like this little wobble head that's a little bit different and you're fishing it a little bit different than how everyone else is, a lot of times that's going to get you a few extra bites. So let's talk about weights. So the wobble head comes in a variety of different weights from a variety of different companies. But one of my favorites has to be the 3/8 ounce wobble head. Especially whenever I'm fishing this thing in like 15 foot and shallower. And the reason for that is, when you get those heavier weights, you get the 1/2 ounces, the 3/4, 5/8, stuff like that, it tends to get wedged in behind rocks a lot easier. And when you've got that little bit lighter weight and you're reeling it a little bit slower, then, you're not going to get hung up as bad. But if you're going to work this thing a little bit faster, if you're wanting to reel it like a really erratic crankbait, if you're not wanting to work it slow, that's when I'm going to bump it up to a 1/2 ounce to a 3/4 ounce. I'm going to make better bottom contact, and whenever I'm reeling it, you know, a lot of times when you're reeling, your lure has a tendency to want to come back toward you. So if you're reeling this thing, but you got the heavier weight, it's going to keep better bottom contact. And I'm also going to use a 1/2 ounce to a 5/8 ounce weight whenever I'm going 15 feet and below. So if I'm fishing deeper, I'm going to throw a 1/2 ounce. You know, it's going to get down there quick. It's going to get schools of fish fired up if they're down there, if that's what you're targeting. And a lot of the times, if you're going through suspended fish real fast, they're going to see this big worm coming through there, or a crawl, or whatever it is, and they're going to hit it because they're competing to see who the first one is. That, or they'll chase it straight down, and they'll come down as soon as it hits the bottom, they'll grab it. Something that's just going to catch their eye. And so if I'm fishing typically 15 feet, I'm going to throw a 1/2 ounce, and anything below 20, I'm throwing a 5/8 ounce. That's just my personal preferences. You know, you can play around with it, mess around with it, but those are just my preferences. And so, what are you going to throw this thing on? So picking the perfect setup to throw this setup on is going to be a little bit different for everyone on what your preferences are. Personally, I like to throw it on 15-pound fluorocarbon on a 7 or 8 speed reel. I like that faster speed, so if they hit it and they knock slack in it, I'm able to reel down, catch up to them, and drive that hook just like a jig. So a lot of the times, you know, when they grab this thing, it is like a jig, and they're going to hold on to it for a while. But a lot of the times, whenever they knock slack into it, you have to really catch up to them. The faster speed gear ratio is going to help you out an absolute ton. So another important factor to all of this is the rod. You know, it makes up the biggest majority of what you're going to be doing here. A lot of the time, you want to be able to really feel what's going on that bottom. So I like to throw a 7.4 to a 7.6 medium heavy to a heavy action rod with a fast action tip. And the reason for that is that heavy, or the medium heavy to a heavy, it's going to give me enough power and backbone to drive that hook. But then again, with the fast tip, I'm going to be able to really drive it. Another great rod for this is the ALX Thunder. If you're not familiar with it, it's an extra heavy rod, but it's got a moderate fast tip. So it's got more bend in the rod, which allows you to drive that hook, and you're not going to lose near as many fish. That's one of my favorite rods whenever I'm fishing this thing 15 feet and below. That's really my deep wobble head setup. But whenever I'm fishing a little bit more shallow, I typically tend to stay toward a 7.4 medium heavy or heavy rod. You just got to play around with it and figure it out. Basically, it's going to be just your everyday football head jig rod. It's going to be perfect for what you need it for. So guys, I hope you learned something in this video. If you did, go down there and leave me a like and a comment and tell me what you learned and what you didn't know about the wobble head. You know, this is simply just another tip that you can keep in your mental arsenal to be able to catch more fish. It's going to be great for you guys that are co-anglers that are fishing against some of the greatest guys in the sport. If you're a co-angler and your angler's throwing a crankbait, throw this wobble head behind him. You're going to pick up a few more bites, and you know, that's really what it takes in those tournaments, is being able to get those few extra bites and picking up the fish that your pro missed, or whoever, you know, is your boat captain or whatever. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to leave everything that you need down below in the description. You can go straight to Bass Pro Shops through the links, and you can pick up anything you need. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope you're able to get out there and use this wobble head and wet a line. We'll see you guys later.